Um, not sure how to send things.
So, and I also have no idea if I can hear anything.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
It's streaming, but you want to. It's down here, right? You want to send them that, right?
Yeah. Okay, maybe both?
Yeah.
I don't think that's gonna work.
Why not? Just email it to me. Open an email because you're logged in. Otherwise, you'll save it, right? And we'll have it saves, right?
I doubt it. Yeah,
No. Well,
we'll have that.
Can you CC me on that email too?
Yes.
So that I can go out there and see if I can just start it?
Can you text my dad message?
Yeah.
And my brother? Oh, you don't have a brother.
I'll tell your mom.
Nobody knew. So then she's like, finally emailed and was like, Laura, I should be here like Tuesday afternoon. We put agree on Friday. So, yeah, so she is supposedly coming back on today, like tomorrow afternoon. Yeah. And then we like, so like I think on Thursday, I didn't know Friday to Maria. So it was like, but on the other hand, I got to give it to her for weeks without like any bill.
Oh yeah, yeah.
BCCB. So that he doesn't have to. Yeah, your brother. I'm gonna go outside and see if I can book.
Yeah. Wait, where's my brother's? Oh, it's
I mean, I think like Ellen and my dad are very exactly. Like we're very Eurocentric, but like I worked in China last summer and eventually love eats in China because like they would come to Europe for fundraising to the US. It's very expensive, yeah, but they're going to Korea, so like August. I'm excited. It's also in like backwater, like village, right? Yeah, I spent only like they have one of the best air. They have my favorite airport in the world. Oh yeah. I've heard Singapore is also nice. I've never been, but the international airport is like Disneyland. It's yeah, it was not. How are you? Could I go into Korea on Fridays for a conference? Yeah. Yeah, I keep like if you say Korean people like you mean like the good one, right? Especially for conference. We do. Yeah. Even university says technology is so used but I don't think I remember some twice in the yes, it's still in I mean, I don't
I'm not so sure because I can't I need to figure out if I could it loud what I thought it could do. And now it doesn't look like.
especially if you say like kind of so I don't know that I just want to like
Yeah, I know, that's why I want to. Yeah, and I can worry that it means I know. You gotta take it.
no, go for it. Do you?
Okay. I want to hear about the taco. We bought like Mike Dad's. We had
Yeah.
cups and water, drink water. Yeah, we just brought all. I don't think we can take yeah, way up. Yeah. I might work too. Work too on that slide.
I didn't
I found the link. I sent them the link,
Okay.
so it should go.
Oh wow. Fantastic.
Are you ready?
Steve Jam. I'm still waiting. Keep chatting.
All right, everybody, well, welcome. Thanks for coming this nice warm afternoon. It's my pleasure to introduce Charbel. Charbel's originally from Lebanon. He earned his bachelor's in mechanical engineering from Carnegie Mellon University, Pittsburgh. He came to Stanford in 2010. He started my group maybe shortly after.
Yeah,
January. 2011. At Stanford, he won the Lieberman Fellowship. He's been named the Insight Health Fellow. He also won a Centennial TA Award, which I'll tell you about in a second. He is very committed and interested in vitro diagnostics, microfluidics applications of that. He's worked on a few DARPA projects and NSF projects, and all of them have involved industry. And so that means there's been like very chain fluid milestones and short-term due dates, crazy things. And he's worked on 4 or 5 projects where the project might change maybe a month after we started in a couple phases. And because of this, sometimes we're drinking from a fire hose in terms of funding. We have a 9-month DARPA seed grant, and then there might be a 6-month gap without funding in this area. Charbel is very resourceful in going out and doing TAs. I think he did maybe 8 quarters of TAs at random times. What is this guy? But he did it very well, so this is This led to his Centennial TA Award. Very prestigious thing at Stanford. Let's see what else. I will say also, as an interesting story, because he's from Lebanon, very arbitrarily and unfairly, somehow Charbel became our group's expert on everything in the 3,000 years of history of the Middle East, of history and politics. So, like 65 seconds before the group meeting starts, I'll ask him, whatever happened with the Arab Spring? Why do so many Lebanese speak French? What's going on in Syria? You know, and Charbel's very politic, very careful, very gentleman. So he learned to sort of handle me, and his response will be, well, they've had some trouble. And then right there, it's almost good time, and I'll say, whoa, hold on, cowboy. I'm not a history professor. That's enough. Let me process that. And then let's raise that up. Put that on.
Thank you all for the introduction. Thank you all for being here today for my talk titled Coupling Abstract Phrases to Reaction and Separation Acids. My work has applications in medical diagnostics, and specifically molecular diagnostics. When I say molecular diagnostics, I'm referring to any technique that quantifies genomic content like DNA, RNA, or proteins. Those tools have found applications in a whole variety of areas, from cancer detection to infectious disease to genetic profiling, and a whole slew of applications and research. There's a lot of techniques that fit this bill. Here, I highlight a few are the more common, widespread, gold standard such techniques. The first row, ones used for nucleic acids. The second row, the gold standards for proteins. The field has grown a lot in the last couple of decades, and now boasts a number of very attractive features. One of them is the high sensitivity. Some of these techniques can detect as little as a single copy of target. High multiplexity, being able to detect tens, hundreds, even thousands of copies at once. And the information that they provide is actionable, clinically relevant, and can tell a lot about what's going on in the body at that point in time. Despite these many advantages, there are still several challenges standing in the way of more widespread adoption. Here, I list a few. The first is long assay times. These tools sometimes require 16 hours, maybe days, to produce an answer. And that's in part due to the long incubation hybridization times, and in part due to the time-consuming sample preparation involved. That all leads to higher complexity. A lot of manual steps, a lot of wash steps, a lot of equipment. There's a lot going on. And all that leads to high costs. From high cost of reagents required to the cost of having highly skilled personnel to run these assays, and the cost of dedicated infrastructure to house all this equipment. In my talk today, I'm going to address the first two of these issues. My work seeks to reduce the long assay time and reduce the complexity. Furthermore, by using a microfluidic platform, my work is amenable to automation, which is the first step towards eventually reducing the cost. I'm going to be talking about ITP quite a bit, isotype phrases. Now, ITP is an electrophoretic technique that uses two buffer systems: a high mobility leading electrolyte, or LE, shown with a triangle, and a low mobility trailing electrolyte, shown with a T. Shown with a hexagon. Sample ions that have a mobility greater than the T but lower than the LE. Focus in a sharp interface between the two. Here I show anionic ITP. Everything's negative charge. And when an electric field is applied, everything migrates to the center. One condition of ITP is that the velocity in the LE and T zone is constant. It's the same. That's a satisfied atomic value. Now, we can imagine that if the green and blue stars here are complementary strands of DNA, putting them in this high concentration region drives faster chemical reactions. They'll find each other more frequently. And in fact, our group has shown that reactions that take several days can be performed in a few seconds. That's an order of 10,000-fold reduction in assay time. Now, this whole thing kind of works because I said the velocity is constant, but the mobility of the LE is bigger than the T. To compensate for that, the electric field in the T is bigger than the LE to maintain constant velocity. The sample ion is migrating in the T and will experience the same electric field as the T, but has a bigger mobility. Therefore, its velocity is bigger and it overspeeds the T. Similarly, if it's in the LE, it experiences the same electric field, has a lower mobility, and thus will be oversped. There's a location along this electric field gradient where the value of the electric field is such that the velocity of the sample matches that of the T and LE. The sample ion will continuously try to find that location, and that's where the interface is. contaminant is present in this mixture, it will have a lower mobility than the T. It will not focus on ITP, and that's how ITP can be used to separate sample ions from contaminants. This self-sharpening feature of ITP, as we call it, makes it very robust to instability. Here we apply external pressure gradient, the PPD focuses, refocuses, and continues migrating downstream. It's very attractive, especially in microfluidic devices where there's a lot of potential for instability to occur. So I mentioned that the sample can be placed in LE or P and will focus as long as it matches this electrophoretic condition, electrophoretic mobility condition. But the rate at which this focusing occurs is heavily dependent on the mobilities and the resulting velocities. I looked into this in a lot of detail, and I won't go into that here today. But what I want to highlight is that this is a major decision to make in the design of an ITP assay related to the sample, LE or P. And under certain experimental conditions, it could lead to an order of magnitude improvement in accumulation rate and reaction rate in assays that use ITP. So I want to explain two modes of ITP that are relevant to my work. The first is steep mode of ITP, and that occurs most commonly when biomolecules are involved, and they are in proteins, and when sample is present in low concentrations. That's a defining characteristic. Here, different sample ions will co-focus, and their high concentration regions will overlap, which helps drive acid chemical reactions. However, after sufficiently high concentration, a plateau is reached, and instead of the sample zone growing in concentration, it begins growing again. And that creates two interfaces, one between the LEM sample and the other between the sample and P. In my work, I leverage both peak mode ITP and plateau mode ITP in the same kind of assay. Peak mode to drive faster chemical reactions, and then a spacer to trigger plateau mode ITP and separate the reaction products. Because of its attractive features, ITP has been used in a whole variety of applications. I highlight a few here that are relevant to my own contributions, and I break them down into the two kind of key ways that ITP is used. The first is as a method to accelerate reactions, and the work there has been mostly limited to species that have high mobility and on their own focus on ITP. So things like DNA, RNA, and modified antibodies. More recently, people have integrated some sort of like post-reaction reactant separation method to separate excess reactants or any other application like that. But that's been limited to solid phase methods, things like gels and mobilized probes. And so I highlight two areas of opportunity that form the basis to do my contributions. The first is extending ITP reactions to low mobility, non-focusing reactants. And the second is incorporating a liquid phase post-reaction separation method into ITP assays. The other area ITP has been commonly used is as a purification method to extract targets of interest from a complex sample. And there's been a lot of work with proteins and some DNA from moderately complex samples like urine and saliva. But what I really want to highlight here is this table showing kind of the history of ITP extraction being used for nucleic acid extraction from blood samples, whole blood, blood circles, and serum. You may know that whole blood is a much more challenging matrix than even serum due to the presence of many cells, which introduce contaminants and interfere with ITP focusing. I categorize this work both by extraction efficiency, how much of the DNA you put in, you get out, and the target sample, what kind of cells are you getting this DNA from. A lot of the work involving whole blood has been limited to fairly low extraction efficiencies, 10%, even 1% or less. A couple of years ago, Marshall devised a device that can process fairly large volumes at high extraction efficiency of 80% or more. I used that device and extended its application to the extraction of bacterial cells, bacterial DNA from bacterial cells, and particularly gram-positive bacteria. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but for now, I want to describe my work using ITP as a method to accelerate chemical reactions, followed by a liquid phase ionic spacer to separate the reaction products. And the first application of that was to enhance DNA hybridization assays. So the very first work involving ITP and DNA had molecular beacons. Molecular beacons are these very elegant structure of a probe in which a fluorophore and a quencher are in close proximity. The quencher significantly suppresses the fluorescent intensity of the fluorophore. Upon binding to a specific target, the structure here loosens up, the fluorophore is separated from the quencher, and the fluorescent intensity increases significantly. This is, again, a very elegant design for a probe. but it is limited by the quenching efficiency. These quenchers are not perfect, and as a result, even in the unbound state, there's still a lot of background signal, a lot of excess signal. So people have wanted to integrate methods to remove this excess signal following ITP reactions. One such method used gel capture, so a photo pattern gel put on a microwave device to selectively capture excess growth. That's an interesting approach, but it is limited by the need to perform this complex photo patterning on a microwave device, and the presence of this gel limits the reusability and creates some logistical challenges to this kind of assay. Another approach was to integrate capillary electrophoresis, CE, as a separation method following ITP. It's a more kind of straightforward method, but it is limited by the diffuse signal that results from CE. You can kind of see it here. These peaks are fairly broad. This diffuse signal limits both the sensitivity and the ability to perform downstream analysis and manipulation on the resulting fragments. Once they're so diffused, they're hard to get back into anything with. So my goal was to use ITP with DNA hybridization and integrate a liquid phase simple method to separate the reaction products that maintains ITP. One feature that I used of DNA was their electrophoretic mobility and how it varies. Now it turns out that in free solution, when there's no gels or anything like that, the mobility of DNA tends to be constant and essentially size independent, more or less. That's in part due to the constant charge to mass ratio. You can see that here. There's a single negative charge on each DNA base. As the DNA grows in length, the number of charges grows with it. In a seeding matrix, the story is very different. You can think of a seeding matrix as being some sort of like matrix of hurdles and barriers that the DNA has to get through. Short DNA can get through fairly fast. But larger DNA has to kind of navigate it through in square form, which significantly reduces its mobility. You can see this in action here. In free solution, a wide range of DNA fragments from 70 base pairs to 23,000 all have very similar mobility. They're all bunched together. However, in a seeding matrix, it's a little different. The small DNA is slowed down a little bit, the large DNA is slowed down a lot. That creates a much larger range of mobilities that's in a very size-dependent manner. I use this feature to design the assay that I'm going to present here. The assay is a single user step, three-stage assay: reaction, separation, and detection. I use synthetic DNA. I use a small probe and a larger target, so the target is larger than the probe. I also use a spacer ion. You can think of a spacer as being like a T, it's a weak acid, but it has a slightly bigger mobility than the T. In the first stage of the assay, the probe and the target, and the probe-target complex, which is the product of the reaction between the probe and target, are all focused in ITP together, in peak mode ITP, ahead of the spacer, ahead of the T. This drives faster chemical reactions through ITP. Downstream, we enter a region with seeding matrix, like HEC. In the seeding matrix, the small DNA, the probe, is slowed down a little bit. The larger DNA, the probe-target complex, is slowed down significantly. That allows the spacer ions to now overspeed the probe-target complex, but not the unreactive probe. That results in the formation of two peaks, one between the LE and the spacer corresponding to the unreactive probe, the background signal. Another between the spacer and the TE corresponding to the probe-target complex. As I mentioned, this work leverages both peak mode and plateau mode ITP. Peak mode to drive the faster chemical reactions, and then a plateau mode for the spacer to separate reaction products. The success of such an assay involves the careful balance of several experimental parameters. One of them is the seeding matrix concentration. Here, I show different experiments performed with different concentrations of seeding matrix. As you can see, for low concentrations, almost no separation occurs. This doesn't really work. For higher concentrations, the resolution of the peaks is much better, and the assay does successfully separate the two fragments, the two peaks. However, there's a limit there. With increased seeding matrix concentration, the mixture becomes harder to handle, much more viscous, and harder to load into the microwave device. There's a sweet spot where you're getting the right seeding performance and retaining this liquid phase, easy to handle kind of advantage to this method. Another factor is the concentration of spacer used. As I said, in plateau mode, the sample zone grows in length. So it makes sense that adding more spacer results in longer spacer zones. And that affects how quickly those peaks form and the kind of resolution between the different peaks. And the final factor, and perhaps the most challenging, is finding the right spacer and TE species. Here I use MOPS as a spacer and Dukes as a TD. These are both weak acids. Now this is challenging because they have to meet several criteria. The spacer, for instance, has to be slower than both the probe and the complex in free solution, but be faster than the complex but still slower than the probe in the seeding matrix. And as you can see, these mobilities are all very close together, still, despite this extra seeding. And so this choice is a challenging one, and is inherently coupled to the choice of seeding matrix and its concentration. But it works, and I show it here. This is the assay, the results of the assay. The first step of the assay is the mixing and reaction step, where the probe, target, and complex are all focused together in ITP, which corresponds to this region here. Downstream, we enter a zone with seeding matrix, and you can see the beginning formation of this second kind of cloud peak that corresponds to times 2 and 3, as the spacer is in the process of overtaking the probe target complex. Eventually, that the spacer takes over the entire probe target complex, and that results in the formation of two peaks, one corresponding to unreactive probe and one to the probe target complex. And you can see this already happening here, and we're now getting the two different peaks. To quantify those peaks, and by doing so, we can quantify how much target we put in. And we've been doing this kind of assay, we've removed this excess probe, removing a lot of the signal, so the background signal. So I tested this assay, validated its performance using synthetic DNA. I found a limited detection of 320 femtomolar, which is about an order of magnitude improvement over previous work using ITP and DNA. It is still, to this point, the most sensitive work with ITP and homogeneous DNA reactions. The assay also had almost 4 orders of magnitude dynamic range, which means that it can detect a very wide range of target concentrations at a constant probe concentration. To wrap this all up, this is a very high-performing assay in terms of both sensitivity and dynamic range. And to bring back the two kind of hurdles of molecular diagnostic assays, a significantly reduced assay time with minimal sample preparation. Now, granted, the sample itself is fairly simple here, and the assay was fairly straightforward to run. One user step, multiple things happening, taking advantage of this microfluidic platform. And the resulting fractions are both in ITP mode, which makes them very amenable to further processing and further manipulation. Having validated that this works, I wanted to go after a more challenging, harder to get target after protein. Now, the gold standard for protein detection is antibodies. Antibodies are themselves proteins that react specifically with a target, with an antigen. In recent years, aptamers have gained some traction as an alternative to antibodies. Aptamers are DNA or RNA that essentially act like antibodies so that they have a specific protein target that they bind to. They offer the advantages of nucleic acids, meaning stability thermally and chemically, and an easier selection process. The process of finding a specific aptamer is cheaper and faster than the in vivo process required to find an antibody. However, aptamers still suffer from low, sometimes variable affinity, and so people have tried different approaches to increase this. One such attempt by a company called Somologic are somomers. We collaborated with these folks, and I use their somomers. Their somomers are more hydrophobic. They modify the DNA bases to kind of make them more hydrophobic and thus limit protein-protein interactions to increase affinity. But one thing that they retain from DNA is their high utility. So somomers, like DNA, have a very high electrophoretic utility. Somomers work ITP to try to detect the protein. Protein are challenging for ITP assays essentially because of their wide heterogeneity. Here I show different proteins and different PI or isoelectric points. Isoelectric point is the pH at which the protein is moving. As you can see, for a fairly the entire range of well-behaved ITP chemistry, there's going to be a lot of proteins that are positive, a lot that are negative. That creates a design challenge for ITP assays. Further adding to that is that the electrophoretic ability of proteins is extremely heterogeneous. The same protein has a wide range of electrophoretic abilities based on the pH, as the balance of positive and negative charges changes. Not to mention, different proteins will have an even wider range between each other of mobility. And as a final confounding factor, the mobility of proteins tends to be low. A lot of proteins, a lot of very clinically interesting proteins have low mobility and do not focus on ITP. One such protein is C-reactive protein, or CRP. CRP is a clinically relevant protein that is associated with higher level of inflammation. Its clinically relevant range tends to be 100 nanomolar or more. And CRP has a very low mobility and does not focus in typical ITP formulations. There's not a lot of data on electrolyte mobilities of proteins, but there was this paper that quantified the mobility of CRP at a certain pH, and it was extremely low. And kind of for reference here, these are typically used Ts in ITP assays, and CRP is nowhere near. This is electrolyte mobility. It's nowhere near. By contrast, isomers, which are like DNA, are way faster, and almost 50-fold faster than CRP. So, my goal is to design this assay using ITP and isomers to recruit this non-focusing CRP into ITP through reaction. And I did that with this kind of assay design, where I incubate the isomer and the protein being CRP, in the electrolyte channel in LE buffer. They react together. I apply electric field. The ITP is initiated with the isomers, which have high ability to focus on ITP. As they focus and migrate, they react with these essentially free-floating proteins, CRP, that essentially not moving. As they bind to the binding of the isomer to a protein, the isomer imparts enough of its charge, enough of its mobility, that the complex of isomer and protein gains enough ability to focus in ITP. At the same time, having a protein bind to the isomer reduces the mobility of the isomer sufficiently that there's a large shift between unreacted isomer and isomer that's bound to the protein. That's perfect for spacers to come in and separate them, and so that results in two peaks. One between LE and spacer corresponding to this excess isomer here that will be the background signal, and the other to the complex of isomer protein that's between the spacer and P. I want to mention that the mobility shift is large enough upon this binding that no gel, no steaming matrix was used here. This is all done in precision. I was interested in understanding a little bit more about what the reaction kinetics are for assays like this, assays that use non-focusing particles. So I designed a model based on some work that came out of our group a few years ago that count for a non-focusing particle. Here I consider both the LE and ITP. The LE is where the reactants, the probe, the isomer, and the target, which is the protein, are initially incubated. So there's a reaction going on there, and an ITP. I neglect and remove the dissociation term. It's often very low, and in this particular case it was very low. And so there's only what's left is an association term. How fast are these probe and protein finding each other and reacting? I want to also note that there's the LE here is characterized by a shrinking volume. As the ITP sweeps through the channel, there's less and less LE for this reaction to occur, and that's accounted for in this term. In the ITP zone, there's still this association term, but the probe also focuses on ITP, and that's accounted for with this focusing rate. The target does not focus, and that's flux in and out of the ITP zone. Under further simplifying assumption of an abundant probe, so there's a lot more probe than target, and that's commonly encountered in real life biomedical assays. The target is present in trace amounts, and you can pump in more probe. Under those assumptions, the probe concentration in the LE can now be considered to be essentially equal, constant. Even if all the target reacts with the probe, that's still a very small fraction of the probe that's there. And so the probe can be assumed to be constant. In the ITP zone, the term for the probe, the association term can also be essentially neglected, leaving only the ITP focusing term. With these further assumptions, I solved the model in MATLAB, and I plot the fraction of bound target. So how much of the target that was initially in this device is now reacted and focused. That metric turns out to be well described by this lambda, which is the ratio of advection and reaction. And lambda is comprised entirely of experimentally controlled parameters. So the user can control all of these parameters. And I plot this relationship here, the red dotted line. Where you really want to be is around this area, where you're close to maximizing the fraction of bound target, the completion of the reaction, but you're not wasting additional time in sort of a low gain area. So I designed my assay to be around here, in the experiments that I'm going to show next. So first I tested this assay in food buffer. I spiked in the CRP and isomer into LE and P buffers, and I found the detection around 2 nanomolar, which is well within the clinically relevant range for CRP, which I mentioned was 100 nanomolar or more. The assay is fairly fast. The model that I described earlier for the data fairly nicely. And the kind of cool thing here is that this approach is general and can work with other non-focusing target species. Having validated this kind of work, I wanted to test it in a more complex sample, serum. Serum is where CRP would normally be expressed. Now, serum is challenging for a number of reasons. I list a couple here. The first is the high concentration and abundance of electrolytes and acids that focus on ATP at high concentrations and form their own spacer zone. So in addition to the kind of carefully selected spacers that I had, there's a bunch of potential endogenous zones that are formed by the constituents of serum, which interfere with both the reaction and separation mechanisms. The other thing is that serum has a ton of protein. Almost half of it is albumin. Now, for reference, this is a log scale on the y-axis. The protein that I'm detecting would be around log 6. Albumin is almost log 11. That's almost 100,000-fold more abundant than what I'm detecting. And that introduces a major specificity challenge that is common to assays, not just ITP, but any assay trying to detect a protein in serum. And that's actually kind of colloquially called the albumin problem. So to try to combat that, I use Z-block. Z-block is a proprietary mixture of oligos by the company that we collaborated with, Somologic, that acts as a competitive inhibitor. You put a lot of Z-block in, and it interacts with the albumin and other proteins so that the somer does not happen. I observed almost 50-fold reduction in non-specific interactions, or signal, and I found that without Z-block, the assay just did not work. There was a ton of false positives. With Z-block, I was able to get a limited detection of around 25 nanomolar. While that's about an order of magnitude worse than the assay's performance in clean buffer, it does suggest that the method is promising. And coupled with further suppression of non-specific signal, either things like Z-block or others, or coupling a selective capture method for albumin which our group has some experience with, the performance of this assay can be further kind of close to match its performance in clean buffer. I think the most interesting thing about this is how it extends the use of ITP reaction assays to this new area of targets. The assay is fast, only 20 minutes, 10 minutes on chip, with minimal sample preparation, even in serum samples, and further sample preparation can be done, again, in a microfluidic device, not requiring extra tools. And this assay is a single user step, multiple things are happening at once on a microfluidic device that uses again, reducing the efficiency. So in the final project here, I want to discuss my work using ITP as a purification method and coupling it with an isothermal amplification technique for detecting bacteria in the blood. The gold standard for bacterial detection is the cell culture. Cell cultures are sensitive, they provide great clinically useful information, but they are very, very slow. They take several days to produce an assay, and they involve constant surveillance and laborious preparation. Under certain types of infections, that's just not acceptable, and so amplification methods have gained some traction as an alternative. PCR is the most commonly used such method. PCR has very high sensitivity, but is also saddled with laborious sample preparation and is extremely susceptible to contaminants found in the majority of complex samples. So, isothermal amplifications have recently gained some popularity as an alternative. Here I mentioned I worked with one of them, recombinase polymerase amplification, or RPA for short. The way RPA and methods like it work is that instead of using multiple temperatures to perform different steps of amplification, they use different enzymes to perform the same steps at a single time. RPA itself has been shown to be equally sensitive to PCR but much faster than PCR. It also runs at a constant temperature of around 40 degrees, compared with up to 95 degrees required of PCR, and it's been shown to be more resistant to contaminants in a variety of samples, like urine, saliva, all those things. However, whole blood inhibits RPA. It works in a lot of the components of whole blood, but not whole blood itself. The reasons for this are not fully elucidated. Could be the chemicals used in the processing of blood, could be the DNA present in the host cells, or it could be other cell or blood components present in the whole blood. While the reasons themselves are not fully clear, this effect is consistently observed. That's really unfortunate because whole blood is a very important matrix for infectious disease diagnostics. My goal was to try to use ITP as a purification method to extend the application of RPA to whole blood for the detection of listeria from whole blood. I chose listeria because it is a clinically relevant target, and it's an infection that can be life-threatening to a subset of the population, pregnant women and fetuses, and immunocompromised patients. There are no known blood-based products that detect listeria, and another thing about this particular bacteria is that it's gram-positive, which means that it has a thick cell wall, unlike gram-negative bacteria that has a thin cell wall. This thick cell wall makes the bacteria much harder to lyse and break. Again, the DNA gets inside. And so it posed an interesting challenge from that perspective as well. Before I talk about my own work, I want to highlight some work that came out of the University of Washington last year in the Bozeman lab, where they used IPT to extract genomic DNA of E. coli bacteria, gram-negative E. coli, from a milk sample, so for more of a food safety application, and detected that using LAMP, which is another isothermal amplification. I thought this work was very interesting, and I wanted to extend the use of IPT and isothermal amplification to a more challenging species, the gram-positive listeria, from a much more challenging and medically relevant sample, blood. And I did that using a different isothermal amplification method, RPA. So, I designed an assay that is 3 steps, and I'll talk about each of the steps in more detail, but I want to give a brief overview here. The first step is lysis, taking whole blood that has bacteria in it, breaking this bacteria, getting all this content out, and then putting all that into a microfluidic device where I perform my TP to extract the DNA. You can see this happening here. The blue band is corresponding with the DNA that's separated from whole blood. And then eventually the DNA IPT will reach the extraction reservoir here, at which point I manually take it, put it into the RPA master mix, and perform this isothermal amplification. Here you see the results of the experiment using inactivated bacterial cells, and you can see successful amplification. This is an increase in fluorescent signal which signifies that amplification occurred. In comparison with the negative control, where there's no target and there's no amplification that's observed. As I mentioned, listeria is tough to lyse. That's in part because of its thick cell wall, and it so happens that a few years ago, a paper came out looking at the performance of different commercial lysis methods for listeria and E. coli, and quantified how much DNA they got from this method. As you may notice, almost nothing worked for listeria. E. coli collapsed. For listeria, however, only one thing could work a little bit, and that was the high concentration hotshot. And that's essentially hot sodium hydroxide. So high basic, very alkaline mixture. A year before that, there was some work out of our group that showed that this kind of chemistry, this kind of high pH alkaline chemistry, is compatible with IPT. So armed with those 2 pieces of information, I designed a lysis buffer that had high concentration of sodium hydroxide and proteinase K. Proteinase K is a protease. It destroys and degrades proteins. That's particularly relevant in whole blood, where there's a lot of proteins that bind DNA. Upon binding DNA, they significantly slow down its mobility, and they found in the previous problem. When it does that, a lot of DNA is not focused, and IPT is not extracted. I ran the same assay with and without proteinase K treatment, and I found no success when proteinase was excluded. So, I designed this lysis chemistry with sodium hydroxide with the proteinase K. I incubated this mixture for about 10 minutes to allow the lysis to occur, and then I neutralized the high pH of around 12.5 to 13 down to around 8.3, which is much more compatible with IPT chemistry, using the LE buffer that I mentioned in my IPT. I took that mixture and I put it into a microfluidic device that was designed by Marshall that has a number of attractive features. One of them is that it can process 25 microliters of sample, this orange region here. I put that mixture and I applied IPT. As you may be able to see, there is a beginning of separation occurring as the DNA starts to get out from the whole blood and contaminant, until eventually all the DNA is extracted and it reaches the extraction reservoir, shown here, and the whole blood is a little left behind. And at which point, with the pipette, I take it out, put it in the RPA master mix, incubate it, allow this isothermal amplification to occur. At the 20-minute mark, I measure the fluorescence and quantify it. First, I did this assay with spiked genomic DNA of listeria. This is pre-purified DNA from listeria cells that I put into whole blood. I did that to verify that this method continued to work. What I found was that without IPT purification, red squares here. The assay, my results are consistent with the literature. Whole blood inhibits RPA, patients observed. With ITP, I was able to detect as little as 60.7 femtogram per microliter, which is equivalent to 5,000 cells per milliliter, or around 10 to 20 cells loaded into the microliter device. That's a very promising result. It suggests that ITP and RPA work very well, and blood detection is more about the volume than anything else. Having that validation, I want to test a more realistic sample, so I used inactivated listeria cells. These are listeria cells that are rendered non-infectious at the surface by neutralizing their proteins at the surface. I did that for my own safety and in understanding our lab's capacity to handle biomethods. And without ITP purification, I showed that no RPA again was RPA was again inhibited by whole blood. With ITP, they will detect as little as 2 times 10 to the 4 cells per milliliter, which is a really promising result in terms of the ability to extend the application of RPA to whole blood. It is about 4-fold worse than the spike genomic DNA performance, which suggests that the lysis may be incomplete, or there's more contaminants found in the cells or the cell mixture that inhibits or interferes with RPA and or ITP. So further iteration to further improve systemic detection. But this result is very interesting and very promising for RPA and ITP integration in the whole blood samples. The assay time was around 50 minutes here, a little longer. Most of that was on ITP. And that can be further reduced if intended by using different equipment, perhaps dissipating the heat a little better, and using different buffers. For comparison though, the current methods require multiple hours and minutes to actually produce an answer. And the assay was fairly simple as far as non-infectious disease diagnostics go. Only 2 user intervention steps were required after the initial mixture. One is kind of taking the lysis results, and then one is after RTH action and putting it into RTH. Cool. So, I want to go over now. Alright, so I want to wrap up. The first, I presented 2 projects today. The first 2 use ITP as a method to accelerate chemical reactions, followed by an ionic spacer, a liquid phase method to separate the reaction products. I first showed this assay performance for the DNA hybridization assays, the high sensitivity and the dynamic range. And then I showed the ability of this approach to extend ITP reactions to non-focusing species, and showed that CRP as a target for both clean samples, clean buffers, and serum samples. And finally, I talked about ITP integrating with RPA and isothermal amplification method to detect bacteria in whole blood. So that for both spike genomic DNA and inactivated cells, that's very promising result for the potential to extend application of RPA to these samples. There's a lot of ways to go with this research, but I just want to highlight one here. Here. So I mentioned RPA, a lot of there's 2 user steps that are performed off chip. There's potential to eventually perform all these and be very interesting to do them on microfluidic chip. And here I show very, very preliminary results for performing RPA in a microfluidic reservoir. And what you can see is that the on-chip amplification results kind of match and are similar to the results for the thermal cycler, just indicating that there's promise for this kind of amplification to be performed on an microfluidic device. And that's very interesting, and you can extend the application of such assays to more point-of-care applications with more limited resources. Yeah, so these are the publications, and I want to thank wonderful people I've had the chance to work with, and all these folks that make things work happen. And yeah, they're very fun. Okay, so I want to first thank Juan for being my advisor for the past since January 11th, for taking a chance on me all these years ago, and for all the advice and mentorship that I've had since that period of time. I think I was definitely not the researcher And I want to thank the rest of the community here. I'm very grateful for you guys to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the advice and conversations we've had over the years. Thank my lab, the wonderful Santiago lab. It's going to be hard not to be part of this group for in the future. But I'm glad to see that it's in good hands. I look forward. There's a lot of wonderful people. I'm give a special shout out to Giancarlo, who was my mentor when I first came, and who looked out for me when I had absolutely no idea what was going on. And he's definitely been happy with that, and been great friends. I think Yatyan, who's here, and Yatyan and I came together at the same time to the lab, and we've gone through a lot of the same experiences together. There was, especially one summer when I was commuting to Livermore every day, and having our kind of twice a week commute with the carpool with Yatyan was one of the few things that kept me sane. She would literally listen to me rant for hours about how I don't want to be like a cow in the second line. It's no surprise that Yatyan would be in any picture in our group if you were to see it. That's the kind of person she is. She brings people together. And I want to thank Denny, who's our boss now. Denny and I shared our kind of little lab room for several years. She was a great friend and was always there when I needed her support or advice. Now she's taking out from Harvard. I've had a sort of great pleasure and honor to participate in a number of group and organizations in my time here that have completely kind of shaped my experience at Stanford. Maybe chief among those is Stanford by Design program, which I kind of randomly walked into the classroom the first day that I actually know what was happening, because I was going to a different class. And 3 years later, I've been part of this group for like the best part of my time here as part of that community that's really shaped my time here, and I think it's shaped my career going forward. And this is the higher slide. What I would love to do is for everyone in this picture and everyone here, tell you the 55 ways in which you're amazing and made my life a lot better. But I don't want to keep everyone here for like Friday. So I'm just going to say thank you all for making this experience worth it, for giving me a lot outside the academic things that I've had, for kind of really enriching my life and all the impacts of my life. We went to Vegas something, but no. I want to give a special shout out to a few people who were with me from the very start of my time at Stanford. Hardik and Lorenzo. Hardik is a wonderful guy. He's one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. And if you ask Hardik, he's probably the funniest person as well. Hardik's been a wonderful friend, and I've really met him a lot for supporting, especially in recent months. And he's been a great source of friendship and great. And Lorenzo, Lorenzo's probably the biggest Taylor Swift fan other than myself. That means a lot. I know that whenever I have her and he's not, and that's very frequent, he's probably on the other end of that text message, ready to embrace and amplify whatever I have to say. His kind of unbridled passion for the stupidest of things is only matched by his kindness and generosity. And I know that Lorenzo always has my back. And that's, you don't get a lot of those people, so very good. And finally, Mike, who is more of the Beavis in my butthead. Mike and I came together to this place a few years, well, 6 years ago. We were friends in college and lived together the entire time here and worked right next to each other. There's been a lot of Mike in my life. And I think Mike's the nicest person I've ever met. He gives a lot of himself. He's also been the kind of standard bearer for me in my time here. Kind of, if I want to know what I should do next in the PhD, I kind of look for Mike for advice. It's unfortunate for me that he's now down in LA now, but it's not unfortunate for the country. He's working on the Chicago. We're all very proud. This is one of my favorite pictures of anything. And of course, it would be remiss if I didn't thank that one person who always knows what to say to me when I need to hear that he speaks straight from my tongue. Who kind of always knows the right thing to say. I'm talking, of course, about Springsteen. I'm talking about Diana. Diana's been a partner in every sense of the word. To me, her love and support have gotten me through a lot of very tough times here. Um, I think she is the most kind of loving and kind of selfless person that I've ever met, and I've been grateful to be honest with you that she's not doing a lot of that for the women and babies made her in life, and yeah, I've been very grateful to have her on. I definitely not be there. And so transitioning from my acquired and my left and one of the things for coming all the way from Miami, which was not easy for her to do. My aunt is a kind of a role model, and she's the first person, only person to run group to come to the U.S. And she's given a lot of her life to herself to working on solving cancer, which is a very noble and wonderful pursuit. She's kind of been the person I want to follow my scientific career. I want to thank my brother. As you can see from these pictures, my relationship with him tends to be me trying to bother him and him begrudgingly agreeing to being me. My brother is like my favorite person in the world, and he's unfortunately here today because another budding doctor who is required to but there's no kind of sure source of doctor than knowing that my brother is a psychologist. And of course, my parents who have given me everything that we don't be anywhere when I left without them. I hope that going forward in my life I can be as considerate as loving and generous as they have been able to help me. Yeah, and thank my mom for coming here, my dad for keeping me here for the news issue. And yeah, thank you. That's actually it. Thank you very much. We have time for a few questions. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so to detect cells themselves, the circulating tumor cells, that's definitely a potential application. One challenge is they're so rare that to kind of detect those in flowing liquid, you have to process really, really high volumes. And that's something that people have done allegedly, and it's certainly something that can be done. Another application with cancer cells, single cells, is the fractionation of the contents of the nucleic acid. And that's something that our group has published and has a lot of experience. So it's definitely a potential extension of this work.
Any geopolitical?
Yes.
Can you talk about what was the October of the other
Yeah, sure. So for the first class, which is a question as well, the limiting factor has been the presence of some remaining background signal, very little. So I'm removing maybe 4,000, 5,000 full background signal, but there's still a bit, and that forms one limit detection. And that could be due to the probes that we're getting from people, or somehow we're creating some kind of if that's solved, then the limit detection literally is the equivalent to on the higher end, it's kind of the capacity. Or no, actually, it's also for protein to be solid.
It's not going to be like the maximum
Yeah, for right now, but it could be that could be
increased.
Yeah, I'm talking about that theoretically.
Got it.
Now talk about the limitations of chemical and biological experiments.
Um, yeah. So I think most of my work has actually involved either off-the-shelf chips or custom design chips that I did not design. And so that has not been a limitation itself. Where that can be an issue is things like how much length do you dedicate to the separation part, or how much volume are you processing. That does introduce new kind of things to think about, new forces, new constraints. It did not pose an issue, I believe, in my work, in the project that we have here, but it's definitely something that is always on the back of my mind. And so I kind of pick the devices to try to maintain a certain level of separation or sufficient volume that I can detect something coming from this.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we're going to go to session unless any kind of
Yeah. Right, I just think I was like, you said that.
Thank you so much. Thanks, buddy.
Hopefully, I'll see you next week.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks so much.
No, I saw you, I have like that. Sorry, I was like, it's just spiking back.
Oh, you have to go back.
So I like waved. No, it was,
Yeah, like wait, let's talk today. Maybe like at 5 or something, or text me.
I did this video where you have the robots that fly
And then we can
nice.
it's kind of like
Oh, God. I just been by, I was like, it was good to see.
I don't know how to turn off the live stream.
I saw you were here with this.
Log out. It's easy.
It's the live streaming.
So it is.
Last year, we started this one.
No, it was just the help.
It's okay. I think I just need to. I think I just close it.
We're gonna infrastructure. So like Windows or wind turbines. It lands and it stays there, and it can move around. So you can access very high.